some of these franchise models are simple enough that you can operate and manage 2-3 people without having a manager. Others, there's more moving parts to. In terms of me buying 5 territories or 5 franchises, the one that I have, I need a manager, not to start with. So the person who I'm partnering with, he is going to operate directly, manage it for 10 to 12 hours a week.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, I always encourage you people out there to become entrepreneurs if you're not already. One of the most surefire ways to succeed at being an entrepreneur is through franchising. Now, for myself, that wouldn't have been a good option, but it might be the perfect option for you. Usually you talk about franchising, you're thinking McDonald's, Burger King, big fast food entities. But the fact is that some of the most profitable opportunities are not there at all. Robert Bernotas is with us now. He's going to give you the franchise hacks that will help you succeed and become a wealthy franchisee. Robert, it's great to have you on. So you've been in franchising since '86, nearly 40 years. So you've seen everything. I guess I should ask you, what are the most money-making franchise opportunities out there with the least investment?
Oh, you cut straight to the chase, don't you? You know what? I bought a franchise not too long ago. It's in the service sector. It's non-brick and mortar type of franchise. It's actually a service that does grout and tile cleaning. Sounds innocuous, sounds boring, but there's money in things like that. So if I had to name a sector in franchising that I think harbors some of the best opportunities in franchising, financial opportunities, I think the home service category, which also crosses over to B2B as well, I think is probably it is the hottest category in franchising right now. I'm watching a really interesting migration of franchise investors that were traditionally into brick and mortar retail type concepts, doing things like boutique fitness or beauty or food. I'm watching a migration of these franchise investors, savvy people, own other franchises, into these service types of concepts. The reason being is because your ROI is infinitely better. Meaning, in other words, if a candidate or a client that I'm working with says to me, Bob, just show me the best financial opportunities. I don't care what the widget is, as long as it's something that is I can do on a part-time basis, because most of my franchise investors are looking for part-time, semi-absentee or semi-passive franchises. But franchises that can be operated on a part-time basis, best ROI, best earnings. I don't care what the widget is, as long as it's something that's ethical, provides a valued service to the community, then that's the direction I would typically steer them in. Those are where the best financial opportunities lay.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I'm currently updating my kitchen, and I used a franchisee called Kitchen Tune-Up.
Yep.
And, the guy is pretty hands-on. It's definitely not passive, because these people don't show up, your employees, you know what it's like now. But I assume his investment was pretty low up front, and he probably had to go for like a 2-3 week training period where he learned all the ins and outs of updating kitchens.
Right.
And it looks like a great business, but like every business, there's aggravation, right?
Absolutely. Depending upon how you approach the model, more and more franchise companies are developing what's called a semi-passive model, simply meaning they put the tools in place to support you doing it on a part-time basis. Now, the individual, if that was the franchisee that came in, was doing it in your home, they're old school. They're doing it. That's a full-time franchise. Franchise companies are trying to get away from that. And the reason being is, how much can he grow? Can you really scale doing it that way? So more and more franchise companies are developing models to allow franchisees to do it on a part-time basis, hire people, manage a manager in a lot of cases, and scale a business into something much, much larger. Because if you're depending on yourself to do it, it's only so much bandwidth you have.
Of course. You can only be in so many places at once. Usually, most people, it's one place. I could be in 3 or 4, but I'm the exception. I'm a multitasker. Hey, so like how much for these home improvement ones, like your grout and tile cleaning operation there, what did it cost to get into it?
Well, that one, go ahead.
Yeah.
That one cost me about $110,000 if I was buying one franchise. The reason and so typically those types of franchises will range from maybe 75, 80K up to a few $100,000 for most of them, depending upon the type it is. But one thing that I love about these types of franchises is the scalability, meaning, and this is why I think it's so interesting for franchise investors and a lot of people who traditionally invest in real estate. I think this is an infinitely better model to generate significant income, return on your investment, and also build a lot more equity a lot more quickly. But for instance, what I did with that franchise that I acquired, I didn't buy one franchise. I bought 5 franchises, meaning I bought 5 territories. Okay. So here's the difference. If I were to do a crumble cookie, if I were to do a Orange Theory, I mean, it would have fallen somewhere between $750,000 to $1 million to open one.
Wow.
But if I opened a second one, same thing. If I opened a third one, same thing. The beauty with these types of concepts is, I mean, the one that I bought, again, maybe about 110, 120 to do a single franchise. I bought 5 franchises. My total investment was about 260 because I'm just buying more dirt. Okay. I'm doubling, tripling, quadrupling, quintupling the size of my territory, in effect, doubling, tripling, quadrupling, quintupling what my potential income can be, but I'm not spending it proportionately because I'm just buying more dirt. And then I scale into it over time by adding more personnel and more vehicles, depending upon the type of concept it is.
And what can you make off of one of these franchises? I mean, you don't have to give us an income statement. Just give us a range here.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends upon. I mean, are you going to see things that can perform like a McDonald's in terms of what a gross sales can be? No. Absolutely. No, you can. You absolutely can.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it really, again, depends upon what the concept is, but you find the margins are, I mean, if you're getting food, the margins are going to be small. But if you scale enough with these types of concepts, you can build McDonald's type income through it without spending a fraction or only spending a fraction of what it would cost to open a McDonald's.
Okay. Here's a big question. I already disqualified myself as a franchisee because I can follow instructions.
Okay.
Type ideal candidate to be a franchisee.
Yeah, most of my candidates, look, I have my franchise investor clients that I work with, people who own other franchises and are always looking to expand their portfolio. But most of my clients are actually coming from corporate America. They're in a management type position, more executive position, in some case, C-suite executive position. And they're looking to start to build income so they can eventually exit corporate America. And depending upon what their plan is, I mean, it could be 5-year exit. It could be a 6-month exit. And in some cases, people just want to get out now and try to get into something that they can start generating income in pretty quickly and replace their job income quickly.
Okay. So, all right. So corporate types probably excel the best because by nature, they're working in a controlled environment to some extent. And like you said, pre-call, franchise agreements come with guardrails. So,
correct.
So your tile and grout cleaning operation, how long did it take before it was profitable?
I just launched it. It's in the process of launching now. And I have a partner that's going to operate it for me. He's going to put in 10, 12 hours a week to operate it. But no, I have no bandwidth. I can't put, I told him that I'm going to put 2-3 hours a month into it in meetings with him, but I don't want to be involved in operation.
So you mentioned semi-passive. So you got to get a manager. That's got to be the hardest part and the most important thing when you enter into a franchise, that you're not going to work 9 to 5 or actually 8 to 7 or 8. You got to get somebody to do it. You have to incentivize that person, and you got to make sure that they're treated well. Opportunities are there, because if you get a good one, you never want them to leave, right?
Correct. Look, some of these franchise models are simple enough that you can operate and manage 2-3 people without having a manager. Others, there's more moving parts to. In terms of me buying 5 territories or 5 franchises, the one that I have, I need a manager, not to start with. So the person who I'm partnering with, he is going to operate directly, manage it for 10 to 12 hours a week. And we're starting out with a couple of people. But as we expand it, then we will place a manager, we'll put a manager in place, and we may end up with, 12, 20 people working for us over time. But it really depends upon the model. Managers, a lot of these companies really have that infrastructure already in place. They lay out how they want you to build it, the best, the most efficient ways to build your business. And some, there's enough moving parts where you're really going to need a manager day one, and others not so much.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm looking, there's a lot of websites that rate and rank franchises, like Franchise Rankings, Franchise Gator. Are they accurate, or are they kind of?
And I would say not so much. And a lot of the rankings really depend upon what their relationship is with that franchise company as well.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I see one here in Florida, actually called Groutsmith.
Yeah. There's a few of those.
Few of them, huh?
But what I like about that category, not just grout, but the home service category in general, it is a fragmented mom and pop category that young people are just not going into anymore. So there is a lack of good contractors to do any of these types of services. So there's massive demand for it. And I don't know if you've you tried to hire a contractor or a painter or anything like that recently. It's nuts, right? So I have a friend, he's in the Tampa, Florida area, and he shared with me that his HOA was giving him some crap. He had to get his exterior of his home painted. Yeah. He reached out to a dozen painting contractors. Of the dozen, 3 got back to him. Of the 3, he scheduled with all 3 of them. 1 showed up.
You got it. You got the job.
Well, not exactly. I mean, the one who showed up, he took some measurements, never came back, never heard from him. He had to chase him down, finally got a hold of the guy and got a price from him. And John, my friend, thought it was an outlandish price. So we tried to negotiate. The guy said, no, that's my price. So he said, what the heck? I got a schedule. He went to schedule with him. The guy was almost a year out.
Yes.
So the category, not just painting, but a lot of things in this category, there's so much demand and there's a lack of sophisticated players. What franchising is really brought to that category is a greater level of sophistication, technology, professionalism, and consequently, franchises are pulling market share away from the mom and pop operators.
Okay, so I'm looking at 2 of them here on franchise rankings. One is called Wow One Day Painting.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that they've been around since 2008. They don't have that many units. They only got 22 units, 90,000 to get into it. And I mean, is that
no, look, I honestly probably not. Look, there's over 4,000 different franchise concepts out there. I would comfortably tell you I would stay away from most of them. Not that they're bad companies, but there's some really good concepts out there. But trying to find them is kind of like trying to find a needle in a haystack, because when you're going online, which is the typical way people start their franchise search, is to go online. Unfortunately, first of all, the vast majority of people that are doing this are landing on portals like you just landed on.
Right.
And some of these franchise companies are advertising on the portals. It's unfortunate that most of the better companies
pay for play here, obviously.
Exactly. And most of the people that come through the portals and land on these franchise companies end up not being qualified. So the franchise companies end up wasting a lot of time. But the other thing is they're just showing you what they want you to see. And it's impossible to try to, evaluate these companies using portals, using these sites.
Okay. So here's another one. It's funny when you mentioned like getting stuff done. Handyman. Here's Handyman Connection out of Ohio. They got 75.
Yep.
And they got really a 96.2% review for what that's worth.
Mm-hmm.
$100K to get in. And I mean, I see it that it's so hard to find these handyman. My handyman just got deported back to Mexico. And I'll tell you what, I was heartbroken. If I had known he was facing deportation, I would have adopted him so he'd be my son, and they wouldn't have been able to send him back.
Well, don't worry, he'll be back.
Yeah, I hope so.
He'll walk back across the border.
Hey, my whole neighborhood shed a tear, many tears. Avi was so good, and he showed up, and sometimes he didn't charge me enough, and I said, Avi, take another $100. You're not charging enough for the amount of time you spent here.
Yeah,
how good he was. But to find guys like that, you go to a franchise, at least you might have a shot, right?
Yeah. Well, but from an investment standpoint, if you want to be the franchisee and you are in corporate America, you're not going to go out and you're not going to do the handyman work, right? Yeah. So what's important is to identify franchises that have semi-passive models. They have the infrastructure in place to support you. And look, you can look at two concepts that do exactly the same thing, and it could be a massive difference between the two concepts. So, I mean, between 10 and 20% of franchises in any given category of franchising are solid businesses. A lot of them are not. A lot of them get launched and they just never go anywhere. So if it's a franchise that doesn't have growth, and it doesn't matter how old the franchise is. I mean, a franchise could be 25 years old, but if there's only, 20 units out there, 20 franchisees out there, I'd stay far clear of it. However, if a franchise is, let's say, 3 years old, but it has 500 franchises, usually there's a reason for that. And often it's the franchise investors buying up territory with that particular franchise because they recognize it as a strong financial opportunity.
Right. And it's interesting. I go to this place called the Stretch Zone, which is like wonderful for my back, everything else. I'm looking here. It says they're making $357,000 according to Sharp Sheets, and 187 locations. And, it doesn't take a whole lot of money to get into it. 3-year payback. And hey, I can vouch for it. But again, I think that one of the biggest stumbling blocks with all of these franchises is finding employees in this day and age.
No doubt. And it really depends upon the category that you're in. If you're talking about hospitality, it's exceedingly difficult to get and keep employees. If you are talking about something maybe in boutique fitness, like the Stretch Zone that you mentioned, it's more difficult now than it was 3 years ago, but it's still doable. Same thing with beauty. And again, and looking at the service category, be it home service or home service also crosses over to B2B. That's easier. It's not perfect. You're paying more now, but there's so much more margin in those types of concepts than there is when you're doing brick and mortar retail. You are tied to a lease for at least 5 years. You have the brick and mortar retail build out, which is becoming more and more expensive, versus the concepts that you could potentially run from an office, a small office, maybe a small, some flex space, small warehouse, or in many cases, even from your home. So the startup costs are a heck of a lot lower.
Okay, so I have to tell you a story. So there's a Jersey Mike's. They've been working on it probably for almost a year. I mean, they construct in Florida, they build high rises faster than this. And it's like, but Jersey Mike's seemed to be like I never saw one go out of business. They all seem to be busy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Technology, the apps, and everything else. Is that a good franchise?
Yeah, it's a solid franchise. I mean, again, depending upon what you want to accomplish, it's not going to be inexpensive to get into. And sometimes when you look at what the price range is online, it's not necessarily representative of what the real cost is. Usually the real cost is higher. But you're talking about typically somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million to open one. Unless it's freestanding, then it's going to go up even a good bit higher. But food. The issue that I have with food is that the margins are low. You have high turnover, minimum wage employees. It's become exceedingly difficult to hire in that category. So it's not when my clients say to me, Bob, show me the best financial opportunities, I don't show them food.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And you're not going to do food on a part-time basis unless you have a management team and you develop multiple units and you have a solid management team that's going to do that for you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hey, you've been a wealth of knowledge here, Bob. I know that people are going to want to contact you and find out more. What's the site that we find you at?
Franchisewithbob.com. And if you like, just reach out to me. I'll send you my book. Be happy to do so.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's excellent. So franchisewithbob.com. It's in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And when you go there, please sign up for your free newsletter. If you got a question for Bob or myself, just shoot us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Bob, really barely scratched the surface of franchising. I'd like to ask you if you'll be available to come on again. We'd love to have you back.
It would be my pleasure.
All right, great. Well, we'll talk to you soon. Be well.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.